Hey gamer friends, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Josiah, and we are ready to roll. Every board game comes down to one thing: action selection. We're going to break down the main types that you need to know about, so buckle up and let's dive into action selection.
Right, we wanted this video for those who are new to the board game hobby because sometimes these words, phrases, different types of actions can be a little bit confusing.
Yes.
Especially when you're first jumping in. And so we thought this would be a good video for those brand new to playing board games. Action selection is really just where like all the decision space kind of happens.
Yeah.
It can happen in a variety of ways. This is your turn, basically, how you're going to take your turn, what actions you're going to take on your turn. And there's games have done it just a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
And so we kind of wanted to start with breaking down those different ways that you can make those actions in a board game.
Yeah. So the first one that we want to talk about is called worker placement. Mm-hmm. This is a very common action selection in a lot of games. It's basically where you can reserve a place or an action on the board, and usually you get something from that. So you get a resource or something like that.
Or you can play a card or
it allows you to do something. And also what it can do is block your opponents from being able to utilize that space in a lot of games.
Right.
It also can create a sort of scarcity mindset in the board game space because, if there's an action or a space that I want, or maybe there's two that I want, I really need to go here, but if I don't go here, they're going to get that. And I know they need that. So I could maybe block that from them. And then it, maybe creates that sort of like it in you and in them as well, like that scarcity, like I've got to get to that place
before they do,
because if they're going to get too big an advantage if they go there, something like that.
There's a couple of games that come to mind. We talked about a couple of them. We talked about the West Kingdom games.
Yeah.
Do this. And even some of the West Kingdom games, they don't have a limit on, okay, you can still go there, but like
maybe you get less resources than the first person who got there.
Yeah, or maybe it makes it more enticing for someone to do something mean to you if you're getting too many of a certain resource. So there's all kinds of ways that this plays out.
Yeah, and then another game that we thought about was viticulture. So in viticulture, there's, depending on how many people are playing, how many players you're playing with, there are either one or two spaces usually in every action space, whether it's to play a card or to harvest a vineyard or to make wine or whatever it is. There's usually one or two spaces available. And so if you've got 4 players playing and there's only 2 spots available,
somebody's not getting to do that action.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the selection that we're talking about here, is that worker placement. Like, I'm going to place my worker here so I get that thing and somebody else maybe doesn't, or maybe they get a lesser version of it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good way to do it because you're given a certain number of workers. And so there's a decision there. I only have this many to work with. I only have this many spaces. And, so it has a lot of decisions. And I think that that's why it's utilized a lot, because there's a lot of different things that you can do with it.
That's right. And most games have a lot more selection than you have workers.
That's true.
To place.
That's true.
And so you have to decide, you have to prioritize the actions that you want to use, and which is really fun decision space to be in. So
I agree. Second up is drafting. Now, drafting is when you have a pool of things. It could be cards, it could be dice, whatever the case may be. And you are drafting from that pool. And so you take one of those things and you have to make your action or make your turn based on which one you pull from the pool. And then the other players are going to get an opportunity to then pull from that same pool. So maybe if you're the first player to act, you're deciding between several good things. Well, I don't want my opponent to get that really good thing, so I better take it now. Or
even though it may not be the most optimal for my play.
Right. So you're making a decision. Do I help myself in the long run? Do I help myself in the short term? Do I, there's just a lot that goes into drafting because you're not sure, okay, are they really going for that? And is it better for me to hurt them or better for me to do something good on my turn?
Yeah. So one of the games that we thought of with this was Sagrada.
Yes.
Where you have a pool of dice that you're drafting from, and it's a snake draft. Mm-hmm. So it goes back all the way to the end and then back to the front.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1 players. Yeah.
And so if you're the first player to draft, you have first selection of all of them, right? Mm-hmm. But you also are the last player to draft.
Yes.
So, there's definitely a decision that you have to make when you're when you're drafting that first dice. Like, okay, there may be only 2 options that I really want. I'm probably not going to get the second one.
Right.
Right. So I better choose which one of those I want the most, and then
try and figure it out.
Figure it out from there. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and like you said, there's maybe you're someone in the middle and the person behind you who's the first player to draft, you can see on their board they really need a purple die. Mm-hmm. There's only one purple die, so maybe I want to take that and see if I can figure out how to make it work in mine so that it messes them up, So there's good and bad that come from that decision space.
We also talked about Cascadia.
Oh yeah, good one.
Cascadia is drafting because there are you're drafting tiles to put in your habitat. And so this one I feel like isn't quite as maybe, I don't know, cutthroat.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not as mean as some of the other drafting, but you're still having to make a decision on what's going to best fit into your habitat and how you're going to make that puzzle work in the future for you.
Right.
So I really need this habitat, but it comes with this animal that I can't really place in a good optimal place right now. And so you may want to wait on that one until you can figure out how to make it work for your habitat. So that comes with just as many interesting choices.
Yeah.
It's just not necessarily based on what the other players are doing.
Yeah.
It's more what's going to be best in my habitat and how can I make this puzzle all fit together and work well.
So it's really fun to have these ongoing decision spaces of how do I make these 2 things in Cascadia specifically? How do I make these 2 things, the habitat tile and the animal tile, work in my overall habitat that I'm building best? And it very rarely works out best, at least in my opinion, in my experience, I should say.
Yes. You kind of have to make some choices.
Yeah, some compromises.
It's not gonna always work out.
Yeah. Third up on the list is dice-based action selection. So this is where maybe you roll some dice and then based on what's rolled, you take actions based on those numbers or the amount of that number or whatever it is. So there's a lot of, this is one where it's like, you can be very limited.
You can.
And it could be very difficult to make something optimal happen. Like we thought of Castles of Burgundy.
Yeah.
So there's dice that are rolled and then you can purchase tiles based on the 2 that you roll. And it has to match the number of the tile that you're pulling from or that you're buying from. And then you have to place it in your kingdom.
Yeah. Your duchy.
Yeah. And so, but you can only buy what's available to you based on what you rolled. And so that's where the interesting action is, that the decision space is on that one.
So you have all these tiles, but then once you roll, you're like, okay, well, I can only choose from here or here.
Right.
And I also have to have a die to place.
Right.
So you can only place it in certain places because they're all numbered. And so they correspond to the dice as well. So you have a lot of decisions to make in that game of what am I going to do? What am I going to draft from this pool? And then how am I going to place that into my duchy to make it score the best?
And one thing that's really interesting is like in Castles of Burgundy specifically, there's a lot of options, but then you roll your 2 dice. And it's like, whoop.
Yeah, that's
here
right.
are my 2 options.
That's right.
And so, and then there's, some
ways to mitigate it.
There's ways to mitigate it. And there's options within those 2 those 2 dice that you roll. So it doesn't completely limit you, but it shrinks the options down a lot.
Yes, and then there's like Grand Austria Hotel where you roll a bunch of dice and then like you kind of compile them in these different actions. There's maybe 6 different actions based on the die rolls.
Yeah.
And so if you roll 3 ones, then that action is like the strength of a 3, basically. And so depending on how many of that particular dice you roll depends on the strength of the action that you can take.
Yeah.
And you can choose from that.
So you could make 3 of that one action.
Correct.
But then you remove that die, and so the next person only gets 2.
Correct.
And so yeah, that's really
another
fun.
way that dice kind of play in, and how can I make this work to my advantage based on what's rolled, because you can't control what's rolled.
That's right. Yeah. It's super fun. I really enjoy this one a lot, just because it's specifically like not as much in Castles of Burgundy, like for me as much as Grand Austria Hotel. Like I love this action selection in Grand Austria Hotel. Like it really is fun.
Yeah, because sometimes it's really hard.
Sometimes you just get no dice that you need.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't know, that sounds counterintuitive, but I really enjoy the randomness and the chaos of it.
Yes, I do too. All right, next up is maybe we'll call it action points, or a certain number of actions. So this is when you have a list of actions that you can take, but you only have a certain number that you can do. So this, an example of this would be Pandemic. You're given 4 actions that you can take on your turn, but there's a list of actions that you can choose from.
Yeah.
And so you have to make the best choice based on that. So I'm like, well, I can move, and then I can take a cube off the board.
That's 2 actions.
That's 2 actions.
I've got 2 left. What do I do?
Exactly. And so then that creates some interesting decisions as well, because you have this list, but what am I going to do with it?
Right.
And so I don't know. I think that was really fun that Pandemic did that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other games that do that too, but that was just the one that I thought of right away. It was like, you're given a certain number of actions. This is what you can do out of the list.
Yeah. And it's really fun. When we played like the legacy version of Pandemic, there ends up being like, I don't know, 8 or 10 actions that you can take, like a bunch.
Yes.
But you still only have the 4 action points to spend.
Right. I'm trying to remember, it's been a little bit since we played SETI, but I think SETI might be that way too. Did you only have a certain number of actions in that one?
That sounds right.
Okay. Don't quote us on it, because I'm not remembering it exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
The next one is like a rondel action selection system. So a rondel is basically like a circular action selection of some kind. And so you're going on a board, and it can only go in one direction typically, and you can take actions based on that circular board.
Yeah.
And so we thought of Great Western Trail for this one, because you take actions. You can move your little cowboy, and you can take actions based on where you land on the board, and then you end up going all the way back around and doing it again, and going all the way back around.
Right.
The key to this one is timing, because if I've already passed a certain place on the rondel, I have to wait until I get back to that place to be able to take that action again. So this really comes down to a lot of timing, and when am I going to do this, and okay, now on my next turn, when I get to this place, make sure I do this, that kind of thing. Those actions that you're kind of planning ahead a little bit more because of that, because you have to kind of figure it out.
Yeah. So all of these action selections that we've talked about today they all have certain qualities that make board games better. And there's 4 that we thought of that we want to tell you about. So the first one is that it creates tension. It limits your options. We kind of mentioned that in certain ones. And it brings competition with other players. Like like we talked about, you can block something, you can maybe take something that someone else needs, and so those are sort of the tension creating action selections that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and then it also adds to replayability, because with replay, when you have different action selection you can take, that means that the next time you play, it's probably going to be different.
Yeah.
And you might have to do different things. You may have to pick different tiles. You may have to do do a completely different strategy because you're given what you're given. And so you kind of have to figure out how to make it work with that strategy. And so it changes up the game enough that it makes the game a little bit more replayable. And that's really fun.
Definitely. It also plays into the planning that you have to take on your actions.
Like this part?
I love this part. You know, maybe you have to wait till an action opens up, or wait for an action to come back around, or you know, something like that, and you have to plan out your turns, or like maybe you have to plan it. Maybe like in my favorite game, one of my favorite games, I shouldn't say my favorite game, one of my favorite games, Air, Land, and Sea, you know, like you have your cards and you have to plan out your strategy of what you're going to play. And so the planning aspect of actions that you have a potential to take and the ones that you can take, I like that dichotomy there.
Yes. And with that, then there's also the other side of that coin, which is the adaptability, because you can't always like enact your plan.
Right.
And
rarely,
so,
actually.
Rarely, yeah. So you make a plan, but then you have to kind of have some contingencies. So, okay, if they take this, then I'm going to do this on my next turn. And so there's that aspect too of like, okay, I have to be adaptable, or I have to adapt to what the dice say. That's not really what I wanted to do this turn. So I have to figure out how to make that work. And so there's a lot of adaptability that comes into play as well.
Absolutely.
So the type of action selection makes a really big difference. And I feel like this is one of those things that either makes or breaks a game. But I really think that so many designers have done this really creatively. They've incorporated maybe multiple types of action selection into one game to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. Man, I love the decisions and the puzzle that comes with this part. This is by far one of the best parts of board gaming.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of the main thing of board gaming.
Yeah, it is.
Right? It's everything is built on the action selection of the game.
Yeah, so, how are you going to take your turn?
Yeah.
Sometimes those actions are automatic, like, okay, you can play a card on your turn.
Yeah.
But then a lot of games do this like variable action, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.
And tell us down below, what is your favorite action selection type? We would love to hear about that.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.